The film opens up in Nembe region, a small village in Nigeria. A voiceover of a man narrates about the once peaceful community with beautiful surroundings, now disrupted since oil was discovered beneath the ground. Driven by greed and capitalism, the government started careless drilling practices to acquire the oil and hence polluting the land and water, resulting to deaths of marine life and threatening the health of residents. The devastating environmental pollution pushed frustrated youths to protest against oil spillage, resulting in a tragic clash with the government. During one of these protests, a group of protesters throw a Molotov cocktail across, intending to set an oil pipeline on fire, but accidentally kill a member of the government's military force. The next day, the military finds one of their own gruesomely burnt to death, and the captain gives orders to the army to find the men responsible. The film transitions to a home in the village, where a young lady named Oyen is being held captive in her room by her father Ebie. He forbids Oyen from meeting his boyfriend Abi, and appears to completely hate the fact that Oyen and Abi are together. Things take a turn for the worse when Oyen breaks the news to her father that she is pregnant for Abi. Ebie grows furious and insists on sending her daughter to Wari village for an abortion, and argues that Oyen is bringing a curse into their family by giving birth to a child. However, Oyen disagrees. He locks her up and grabs a machete on his way out to find Abi. Inside another home, two brothers, Olatu and Tekena, are packing their belongings. Olatu asks his younger brother Tekena if he is completely sure that he wants to embark on the journey despite the dangers they may face. Tekena appears annoyed and confidently responds that he is ready. The two brothers bid their anxious mother farewell and embark on a journey to the white man's land. Meanwhile, Ebie fails to find his daughter's boyfriend Abi in his home. At the same time, Abi is out to see Oyen and secretly sneaks behind her room. Oyen informs Abi about her father's plan to force her to abort the pregnancy, which results to Abi breaking her out of the room, and they manage to flee together. Meanwhile, in the streets, armed soldiers are attacking the local people, in search for whoever is responsible for the death of one of their soldiers. The locals are desperately running for their lives, and amidst the chaotic scene, Ebie is captured while Oyen and Abi rush into hiding, including the two brothers Olatu and Tekena. Among them are two rebels, Degbi and Boma, the men responsible for accidentally killing the soldier with fire the previous night. The six of them manage to evade being captured by the angry soldiers. In the military camp, Ebie is brought in and questioned about the whereabouts of two men in a photo, who he identifies as Degbi and Boma. Ebie proceeds to tell the captain that Degbi and Boma are just mere thugs being used, and then frames Abi, revealing that he is their actual leader. He leads two armed soldiers to Abi's home, and they forcefully let themselves in, demanding for Abi. They fail to find him inside, hence leave orders to his family for Abi to turn himself in the following morning. That night, after evading the soldiers, Oyen, Abi, Olatu, and Tekena, including Degbi and Boma, are quietly walking through the Nembe streets. Abi and Degbi appear not to get along and have frequent disagreements, after it becomes known to all of them that Degbi and Boma were behind the killing of the soldier. As the military continues their search and arrest operation, the six individuals proceed to hide for their safety. Suddenly, they discover a snake that crawled around Tekena's neck when he rushed into a nearby hiding. Degbi and Boma suggest they kill the snake and eat it, but Oyen disagrees. She states that the type of snake is a python and a water spirit. Oyen further explains that killing the snake and eating it is a bad omen, and a curse will be upon the one who kills it for food. Despite Oyen insisting the dangers of killing the snake, Degbi and Boma proceed to kill the snake and roast it for consumption. A few moments later, Abi's sister brings him some money and essentials, and instructs him not to return home and immediately leave the town because he is wanted by the authorities. Olatu and Tekena reveal that they were planning to move abroad for better opportunities so they could provide for their family. Olatu asks the rest if they know of a sailor named Mr. P in the village. He proceeds to tell them that Mr. P had promised him and his brother Tekena that he would smuggle them out of the country to Brazil in exchange of some money. Boma reveals that he can show Olatu where to find Mr. P, in exchange of him allowing Boma and Degbi to come along. Oyen and Abi also insist on coming along, and they all give a share of their money to the sailor, Mr. P. He appears hesitant at first, as the initial plan involved only Olatu and Tekena, but eventually agrees to smuggle all six of them upon receiving the money. Mr. P proceeds to sneak them to a small box-like compartment underneath, and since there is no bathroom, they would have to relieve themselves in a bucket. He promises to offer them only a single meal per day during nighttime. Additionally, Mr. P strictly warns them to remain inside and none of them should go upstairs during the journey. A very powerful Russian businessman named Igor is introduced. Igor is the owner of the ship and transports stolen crude oil to other countries. On his way to the ship, he encounters Mr. P, who suddenly suffers a minor heart attack. Igor demands that he is escorted off his ship, and the journey begins. Back in the compartment, the group appears hopeful as the ship starts sailing. Hours later, night falls and a new day begins. The group is unaware that Mr. P is no longer in the ship, hence when Mr. P fails to bring them food during the night as agreed, they eventually grow hungry. In the moment, Degby makes a rude remark about Abby, and they both get into fight until Boma interrupts them and insists they maintain peace during the journey. Suddenly, they discover that the ship has stopped moving. Turns out the Ghanaian Navy has stopped the ship. The commander informs Igor that the ship is under arrest unless Igor provides a receipt for the cargo he is transporting. Igor attempts to bribe the commander, but he firmly refuses to give in. Igor appears to make a call and the ship soon sets sail as the journey continues. That night in the compartment, Oyen begins telling a story about her own people. She narrates how a long time ago, the white men carried their people and sold them in their land. They eventually chose to jump in the ocean and die, rather than become slaves to the white men. It is further revealed that Oyen's parents waited a long time for a child. Her mother would pray numerous times to the river goddess so that they could have a child. Until one day her prayers worked and they finally had Oyen. Since they considered Oyen a gift from the goddess, they decided that Oyen will never get married or have a child. And if she does, she will eventually die. Meanwhile, Degby is haunted by the death of the soldier he accidentally killed. Sometime later, the hunger becomes unbearable, and Degby decides to step out in search for food. Olatu and Tekena attempt to persuade him to stay, reminding him about Mr. P's instructions. However, Degby insists on leaving. Boma warns him to be careful and wishes him good luck as he climbs his way out of the compartment. He sneaks around and luckily finds a kitchen along with some food and begins devouring it. A woman notices Degby and raises an alarm upon seeing the stranger on the ship. Degby is eventually captured by Igor and his men. Back in the compartment, Oyen has a fever. Boma grows restless about Degby taking too long to return. Abby decides to go out in search for medicine for Oyen and promises to bring Degby back. Meanwhile, Igor offers Degby a meal. He eventually tells Igor about the others, when Igor promises to care for them and offer them a decent meal, including a nice bath. The rest are brought in and Igor invites them to sit at the dining table. They appear hesitant at first, but Degby assures them that there's nothing to worry about. Igor offers them food and proceeds to ask them a question, demanding an honest answer from them. Igor asks who they are and how they got on his ship. Olatu confesses that a sailor named Mr. P allowed them to board the ship in exchange of some money. Igor phones Mr. P to confirm the story. However, Mr. P denies all allegations and claims that he did not bring anyone to the ship. As a result, Igor grows suspicious of them and suspects they might be spies. All five get into a loud argument as each tries to prove their innocence. Degby expresses his doubt about Tekena and Olatu, stating that they are likely to be the spies among them. In the heat of the moment, Igor suddenly shoots Degby on the head. The rest stare at Degby's corpse in utter disbelief as Igor's men drag them along and lock them up in a room. They are left helpless and terrified as Boma appears extremely heartbroken about Degby's death. Meanwhile, Abby secretly witnesses the horrific ordeal. The next day, Igor transfers some of his extra crew members to a separate boat and sends them away. Upon getting to Ponta Preta Bay in Cape Verde, Igor's ship is inspected and his hostages are found. The group gains hope as they plead with the authorities to save them. Eventually, Igor gives a bribe to the authorities who let it pass, and they soon head on their way, leaving the five individuals in the hands of Igor. Suddenly, Boma grabs hold of one Igor's associate and holds a knife to her throat after acquiring the knife from one of Igor's men. Meanwhile, Abby notices a man aiming his gun towards Boma from behind and he manages to stop him on time. However, in a moment of chaos, the woman stabs Boma in the leg and he ends up accidentally slitting her throat. It is then revealed that the woman is Igor's younger sister. Watching her die in front of his eyes, Igor appears devastated as he grieves the loss of his younger sister. He is determined to avenge her death, and therefore carries Boma to a room where he skins his meat. Igor proceeds to peel Boma's skin off his body while he is still alive and conscious. Meanwhile, he narrates how his father used to take him on hunting trips as a boy. Although he was bad at hunting black bears, he mentions how good he was at skinning meat. Igor expresses his satisfaction in torturing Boma and leaves him taking his last breaths in pain. Furious, Igor orders his men to find other people who may still be hiding inside his ship. Meanwhile, Abby secretly sneaks around as he tries to find a way to save the rest. Igor takes the two brothers outside and orders them to fight each other to death for his own entertainment. He then promises to spare and free the one who emerges victorious between them. Olatu is unwilling to fight his younger brother, but Tekena is ready to fight for his own survival. Tekena reveals how he hates his brother because he was always seen as the good child while Tekena himself was the bad child, and always took the blame even when Olatu got them in trouble. Tekena proceeds to fight Olatu, but in the end he is unable to murder his own flesh and blood. The two brothers reconcile, and Olatu decides to sacrifice himself to save Tekena. Olatu asks Igor to keep his promise and let his brother live, and he proceeds to stab himself. After Olatu's death, Igor gives Tekena his freedom as agreed and tells him to leave, but there's no place to run to outside the ship. With no mercy, Igor eventually shoots Tekena in the leg and pushes him off the ship, dropping him in the ocean. Meanwhile, Abby keeps dodging and killing Igor's men silently. Igor and his crew eventually discover that there is another person on the ship. The following day, Abby makes his way to the cabin where Oyen is still being held hostage. He attempts to free her but goes into hiding upon hearing some movements. Abby finds the ship's original captain tied up inside another cabin, and he explains that Igor tied him up when he protested the killings. Just then, Igor is heard announcing over the speaker that he will shoot Oyen if Abby fails to surrender. He gives Abby a countdown, and eventually he surrenders the last minute. Abby pleads with Igor to spare Oyen, however. Igor suddenly shoots Oyen in the head as Abby helplessly watches and proceeds to drop her in the ocean. Extremely heartbroken, Abby is dragged to the skinning room as one of Igor's men continue to torture him. Unexpectedly, Bomer attacks and kills the man with the last bit of energy he has. He motivates Abby to fight back before taking his last breath. He manages to kill the remaining guard alive and finds a place to hide. Abby recalls when Oyen told him about the prophecy that she would die if she ever got married or had a child. Even though Abby did not believe in such prophecies at the time, he was still worried about Oyen. Oyen claimed that she wanted to live life as she chooses and assured Abby that she would not die. But just then, Igor finds Abby after he passes out from his injuries and carries him to the skinning room. As Igor prepares his knives, Abby recalls Oyen's death and decides to fight back. Abby suddenly goes missing from Igor's eyes, and he leaks the preservative gas in the room, causing it to be cloudy. As Igor struggles to fight Abby with a cloudy vision, Abby attacks him and eventually overpowers him. Abby gets a hold of Igor's gun as he recalls Igor shooting Tekena on the leg. He shoots Igor the same way, but he manages to get back on his feet in pain. Abby then shoots Igor on his head and avenges the death of his girlfriend, Oyen. After grieving the loss of his friends, Abby and the ship's original captain toss Igor and his associates' bodies in the ocean. Abby discovers Igor's money on board and grabs it before leaving the ship. He returns home to Nembe and distributes the money to the families of Boma, Degbi, Olatu, and Tekena along with Oyen as he delivers the heartbreaking news of their loved ones' passing. Abby visits Olatu and Tekena's home, but to his surprise he finds Tekena. It is revealed that Tekena managed to stay afloat in water and luckily found help. He eventually survived and returned home, however, lost a limb from the bullet wound. Later, with the help of the villagers, Abby delivers the news about Oyen's death to her father and asks for his forgiveness. Ebie breaks down in tears as he grieves his daughter. The next day, Abby packs up and bids his family farewell, preparing to leave for Lagos, a city he will live in as a free man. Meanwhile, Oyen's father buys a gun and heads to Abby's home to avenge her daughter's death. Just when Abby's taxi leaves, Oyen's father arrives with a gun and calls out Abby's name before the film ends. Hope you've enjoyed today's recap. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.